So I just think that in terms of it being, we're trying to be more accountable and transparent to the public. It wasn't as accountable and transparent as it could be. So one of the things was financially, that was just not a sustainable program. And I couldn't find any measure as to why this thing happens this way, or that person gets that, or this person gets this. And so we had to just regulate that to make sure that we were being responsible with the funds. So we work on that. So that's one thing. Also, I think what the participants of the program came on for was jobs, training, and certification, which is not easy to get because, you know, ours is a high-risk population, and we have a society that can be a little difficult in trusting. Yeah. So one of our challenges has been, of course, pointing them to jobs. But instead, we decided when we met the young persons that we were actually putting them in a disadvantage because we're sending them into the world of work. They want to learn skills. They want to do training. But a lot of them didn't have just basic life skills, some soft skills, which actually people all across the population really need the life skills, to be honest. And so we decided, looking at the best models across the region and the world, that we should start with a soft skills training program. And that would also give us a chance for people to be accountable. We don't force them to come to the program. It is mandatory that you will have to come, but we let them choose which cohort they come in. We're currently now in our, I think, fourth cohort, yes. And it's just finishing. I would have just finished this week. Our fourth cohort. So of our members, we've now trained of over 630. We've now trained about 430. So we feel really good about that in terms of the soft skills that they've learned in terms of communication, conflict resolution, or some of the things we teach, financial management. How do you manage if you have less money? You know, you don't think about that. Why did people join the program? Because they needed money. And sometimes my members will say, if you don't give me this money, Miss Hazel, I'm going to have to rob. And I said, well, if you have to rob, then I don't know what to do if you're going to rob. Like, I can't make you not rob, but I've given you this and you have to learn to live within these means, you know? So it almost is like, it's just not successful, a Pay for Peace program anywhere. So we had to create something that could be sustainable, so that we look more into training, certification, and also just meeting the needs of our members, who a lot of them just really want to give back to their community, which I think people don't really understand. I think one of the things they think about the program is that everybody on the program is like a gangster and they're out here killing people and we're paying people, and it's really not the truth. A lot of the people are in communities, so they're at risk. Maybe in families, so they're at risk. We know how it works in St. Kitts. People on the street know. And so they just need just a jump start, something to give them a chance. I think we forget the way that sometimes our systems are set up. What happens to our school leavers? Where do they go? So a lot of the people that we see now were school leavers, you know. Where did they go when you didn't have skills as a young man in St. Kitts and Nevis? And even some of the young women, where do you go? Where do you get work? How do you support your family? If you have children, how do you support your baby moms? How do you give contribution to your home? Your growing boy eating a lot of food. How do you give into so a lot of these things are very practical things that people needed, and so the program really helps them to meet those needs. But a lot of our members have actually now, even as we have to continuously, it's a thing that you can't put down and leave. You have to always be reviewing it. So somebody who needed the program 3 months ago might not need the program now. They might have a job. So we call them for training. So I can't come in, I have a job. Well, if you have a job, like now we're going to have to start transitioning you off the program so that, you know, somebody else, that we could use those resources somewhere else. Mm-hmm.
So what I'm getting from you, and I like how you explained that, because I think there was also misconception, and I think this is what was actually being painted to an extent in the public domain, as well as through certain aspects of the media, that the peace program, now quote unquote the Elevate program, which is now being, you know, structured, is only for those who are involved in gangs. And I like how you address the fact that it's not just the gang members who are being part of the program, but rather the at-risk youths and even those who have left school.
Yes. It's actually really important, too, that people understand that. I'm so glad you brought that back, because this is one of the things we've been trying to do, diversify the use of the funds, right? So what are other things that we could do? So as I said to you before, they were using peace as a suppression program, which is really the role of the police. That's the police's job, suppression of crime. But what makes people commit crime? So what are we looking at that are the risk factors that make people join gangs? So if we're not addressing some of those factors, what is the point of a program? So with the resource from the program, we can do more work in diversion and intervention, which is really important work, because once you cut off the neck, it's just going to grow back. If you cut off the tail of the snake, it's going to grow back. You have a whole generation of new people moving into those spaces, you know? So you have to be like, what can we do to stop it? So it's good to be managing it here, but what are we doing to not make it come up from behind? So we look at the risk to families. So like I said, financially, one of the risks is low income families. We have 51% single parent headed homes here, women heading homes with children. You know, as a young man, you're a man, you feel a responsibility to contribute to your home. And your family thinks you should have a responsibility to contribute to your home. So what are we doing to help people to understand that responsibility? What are we doing to help them to meet that in a more sustainable way? Okay, I only have this amount, I have these children, how can I budget that? So we're just trying to give people the skills that they need to be able to achieve these things, and also some chances, because sometimes people need a second chance or a third chance, you know? And then I think another thing that people misunderstand about the program is we actually suspend members. Members that commit crime are suspended. They don't get money from the program. So if you even have a charge, then you're suspended. If you're from the program until your charge is cleared. You actually have to come with your paperwork to show that your charge is cleared, because that means you're not actually fulfilling your part of the program. So if we've asked you to be on your best behavior, but you've got a weapons charge, you really don't belong on the program, because you're not really trying to elevate yourself. You're not making better choices. You're not taking advantage of the opportunities, and you're not really choosing your life. You're choosing a different life. So we also didn't want money to be going towards that as well. So it's
I think that
things.
last part is critical. So these are people who would have re-registered or registered for the program. Mr. Abel comes into the program now and he has a charge now. That is where he's going to be suspended from the program, not something that was there previously.
No, well, they usually don't come on the program if they have a charge. Yeah, so one of the things I think that's also important to know is that we had COVID. I think everybody's blanked out COVID, like we never had COVID. And I always hear people saying, oh, the program was working and we were in COVID. Like everybody was locked down and there was no movement. So it means even the markets were slowed down because everybody could see what you're moving. It's very hard to move transshipment points on a place where everything's shut down, right? So yeah, it's great to say we had it quiet for a bit, but really, honestly, even 25% of the members that were on the program when we met it, which had about 1,300 people on it when we met it, 25% of those people were joined between January and June 2022. So when people say, oh, well, we didn't have a problem because there was only like a small group, it was a much smaller group before COVID. And to be fair, our supervisors were really trying to manage the issues, but they were able to manage it within a bubble. And then how long can you manage that? So how long can you just give young people before they start to ask for more? They had the challenge of some people didn't want to go work. So the supervisor's like, I want you to work. You're not working. I'm taking out your money. Like, well, why are you taking out my money? You know, they're hyped up. So we have to also remember, like, it just was missing some components that it really needed.
How many people are currently on the
Currently, we have 630, about 630. I'll say fluctuate because, you know, as I told you, charges and it goes up and down. We have some very high-risk members. Those members are mostly managed by our director, Major Coyote Sutton. And then I have Alicia Collins, who's our project coordinator, and she really deals on the ground with developing programs like Harvesting Hope and Spokes for Change, which is a boys' bicycle program. Harvesting Hope is our agriculture program. And just finding the programs in government and working collaboratively with other ministries just to try to find where we can mix and match, and we can give you a benefit and you can give us a benefit. So like, for example, I didn't bring our manual, but we have some manuals. We trained people from social development because Lyft is going to need those manuals. Lyft is going to need to teach people financial literacy, so we train Lyft workers. Creative business and enterprise are going to need that, so we train them too. Workers there, so they are also trainers and coaches for our participants.
Okay, what role is the private sector specifically playing in assisting in terms of the whole Elevate program? Because it's one thing for the government, and well, when I'm in the hot seat here, I tend to look beyond just the government, because the government has its role to play, but that can only go so far. The private sector, civil society also has their have their roles to play, specifically in this whole issue of crime fighting and the development of St. Kitts and Nevis. But what role is the private sector playing, and what more can they do to assist in the Elevate program? Because we know Elevate is trying to limit the issue of crime and violence.
Wow, Jermaine, I feel like I just need to take you in my office with me. I wish everybody would ask these questions. To be honest, the private sector is trying. Like, for example, currently we have a program that we're working on with the chamber. And so it's just building up those relationships. We have a new executive at the chamber, so we're just rebuilding. We always had a good relationship with the old executive, but we're just building. So currently we're working on a program that's probably going to be likely part of our citizen security activities, which we've now made a little bit bigger. But we're working with them even to prepare the workforce. So when we speak to the chamber, they say, listen, we want to hire the people, but they don't got the skills. Like, not even just our members, generally, young people, even older people, just don't really have the professional skills to be able to do the work. How can we improve that? So we sit down with them, our partners at OASIS, which is USAID, Elevate, Child Protection Services. Everybody sits in this space together. Okay, what is it that we can do? So one of those things we work on is like a preventative workshop we're planning is like a youth forum, a summit that teaches practical skills for work, resume writing, et cetera, and ends with like a job and better opportunities fair. So the private sector is helping. Also, there's individual people, not just the chamber, that send in proposals to assist us or have offered to take some of our members in the areas of interest. So when we re-registered, we actually asked the members to choose the areas, the skills areas that they're interested in, that they're good at or they're interested in, especially when we're looking at MVQs, which I'm hearing we're now ready for MVQs. Thank you, Ministry of Education. So MVQs, and so we started with that. So we found we have a lot of people interested in construction, of course, and landscaping, and one of the areas, so we had like Mr. Vincent Buckley, he offered to take 5 to 10 of our young men to teach them how to use heavy machinery. Like, if you learn how to use heavy machinery, you can always find a job in construction. You don't need to stay on the program. Once you learn that skill and you find a job in construction, that's going to be giving you much more than you're getting at the program. That's how we transition them out, you know? So we're really grateful for those kinds of partners. We've had, I know that Dwayne Hector also offered to do some help with us with landscaping. So we've been trying to get some preliminary talks with him as well. But also we plan to go to the chamber to actually ask their membership if they can take some of our members in the areas that are focused. But we also wanted to make sure before we do that, that we've really built those relationships. You know, it's great to say we went in and we checked off the box. Oh, we went to the chamber, we asked them. But if they don't really understand the program, they don't really trust it, they're not sure what's going to happen, who are they getting in their jobs, that's like going and talking to deaf ears. So we're just really trying to build up the trusting relationship through some of the other interventions, and this is the next direction we're going. And then also next in our training is ETE, which is our Elevate Through Entrepreneurship program, which a lot of our members are really interested in, being entrepreneurs. Because if somebody's not going to hire you in the private sector, then you're going to have to learn to work for yourself. So in that way, we have a lot of private sector persons who have come on as coaches for us. And also we have private sector persons who have come on as coaches in our financial literacy and interpersonal communications training. So those persons are not members of Elevate. They're actually people from the community. People like Davinia Tomlinson that works with the Aspire program. She's one of our coaches. Pastor Jeremy, he's one of our coaches. We have a few other family counselors that are coaches, community workers that are coaches, people from the ministries I just mentioned that are coaches. And so they do those 3-week teachers that are coaches. So they come in and they do that 3 weeks. So we do get some support from the private sector, but we're looking to work more closely with the private sector, especially the chamber, who have actually said that they really want to be working with us for the solution to citizen security. So we're excited about that. And because of the citizen security campaign, everybody's really been coming to the table. So we're really excited. We're seeing people out here doing their own consultations. You know, people are calling, can we work with this? We have an idea to do that. So it's making us very hopeful that the program Elevate and other programs are not going to be existing in isolation in future. We're going to find ways for all the things to work together. Mm-hmm.
Okay, we will take a quick break now, acknowledge our partners, and then we'll come back, and when we return, we'll continue with the discussions here on Inside the News.
Buy Buying your medication is easy with City Drugstore's curbside pickup. WhatsApp our certified pharmacist at 662-8769 with your requests. For prescriptions, take a clear photograph and send for review. We will engage you in dialogue and then provide a quotation and link for payment. You can then pay via TDC's online payment portal. And once the transaction is complete, you'll be notified that your pickup is ready. Yes, it's that easy. Send your WhatsApp message to 662-8769 to order your medications today with City Drugstore's curbside pickup service.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib. It's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
And we are back here on Inside the News. I'm Jeremy Nabel sitting in today, and we have with us Permanent Secretary in the Office of the Prime Minister, Naima Hazel, and we're talking about citizen security and the Elevate program. Yes, you know, that has been one of the most talked about programs in recent times. The program was rebranded, and it is now providing life skills to the at-risk young people and those who are quote-unquote involved in gang activities here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And you know, as you all know, over the last several weeks, we've had a little bit of a crime problem. So this initiative is one that is beneficial to St. Kitts and Nevis, and this is just my personal opinion. We should throw support behind educating and lifting the young at-risk people here in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. So, P.S., I want to ask you, one of the issues that has arisen in recent times is the fact that a lot of the at-risk young people are those who would have been on remand or those who would have been to prison and they're now out of prison. They don't have any real life skills, especially those who don't have the life skills, who did not take in much of the training. Is the ministry or is the Elevate program going to be going into the prison to uplift some of the prisoners, especially those who are going to be released from prison?
Great question. We actually are in the prison now. What you're saying is exactly right. We actually realize that as well, that some of the persons that, first off, the prisons still have a lot of influence on the streets. And even in the previous program, when we found some of the members were in the prison, then we realized, instead of looking at it to say, okay, well, why are these people in the prison? We realized, okay, well, obviously members from the community are put the members from the prison on so they can help sometimes their families, etc. So we just felt that wasn't the right way to do it, even though maybe for the right reasons the members did it in most cases. So what we decided was to go into the prison and start the training there. So we're now done the life skills training, and we're doing the ongoing financial literacy training. We're actually going to go through it twice with the women in the prison, and then next we're starting with the men in the prison. So we've already assigned a coach to that. So that should start after this tranche just ended. So following independence, then we'll start training in the soft skills first in the prison. And the women have actually asked to do some skills training in the area of like braiding, etc. And we do actually have a person in there, Laverne Davis, who does like hair and etc. with the prison. So we've been actually working really closely with Officer Hodge, Virgil Hodge, and of course the commissioner on trying to integrate some of their programs in our program. So one of the pilots we're really interested in doing now that we've just started is actually trying to help long long-serving prisoners who are coming out and have to make the adjustment. Because if you think practically, when you come out of prison, you've been in prison 3 years, 2 years, where are you going to? You're going to go right back to the streets. The same people that you went into the prison are going to have to help you, which then is going to get you gauged back into gang culture. So looking at that, like I said, it's adaptive. It wasn't one of our original intentions, but we saw the need. So how can we help here? So we just started working with the prisons. So we're working with them also to help to support stipends for their education, for teaching in the prison. We do have some prisoners in the prison that actually excellent teachers, used to be teaching in the communities. So we're trying to just put a little bit there for them, just a small stipend they can put away in their commissary so that they can in turn then be able to help their families. So we're working on instituting that. We're doing an incentive program with the prison. I don't want to say too much about that yet because the prisoners don't yet know what the incentive program is, but it is focused on prisoners and their children. The Prime Minister is very concerned about the children of people in prison and the adverse childhood experiences, the ACEs, that can cause. So we really want to be doing more work there. So we are working with the prison in terms of training and creating a kind of probationary program. They wouldn't, of course, have the same expectations as our regular participants. It's a separate part of the program. But if we could just assist them for a limited time, even 6 months, that they could get back a little bit on their feet. And then in return, they, of course, have to do check-ins. And then that way we're able to keep track of them and what they're doing and be able to assist them in any other ways that we can, just so they can reintegrate into society. It's not very easy to reintegrate into St. Kitts society. We're a bit of a judgmental society. People make mistakes and then we don't want to forgive them, but then we're shocked when they go back into the life. But if we don't do something to assist them when they're coming out of the life, but not to give them so much money that they get back into the life, then it's a balance, you know? And so that was one of the problems I think we had also with the first program, because some persons if you've never had money, and then you have, some people didn't get much money, and then other people got a lot of money. So if you've never had money, how would you spend your money? Like when you sit down and you think, oh, if I had $100,000, I will buy this, I do this, I do this, I do this. So you would spend it because nobody's really actually taught you how to spend money. So that was one of the reasons why we put in the financial literacy. Like, you've had an opportunity, you should have a thriving business. When you get your business thriving, you should be taking your members, which are from your community, you know? You should be taking them into your business and assisting the people from your community. So that's one of the reasons, too, we do that. But we just want to help the prisoners just to get a start so they don't feel in their reintegration that they have to get back into gang life. So that is a thing that newly developed. When we relaunched in January, we didn't know we were going to do that. But we've been working with the prisons since now June on those programs.
I like how you explained that because we've all said, oh, if I have $1 million,
Yes,
this is what
I would spend it.
With $1 million, I would, that sort of thing. And that's a valid point you raise, concern, because what we have found is that, I don't want to say it this way, but people of a certain ethnicity, they have not been trained in life in terms of financial literacy, what we should be doing in terms of investing and all of that. So, and I agree, financial literacy is critical. And you preempt a question I was going to ask about this whole prison lifestyle and so forth. But how are you, and this is more of a governmental level, how is the government working to change the perception of people? Because I've interviewed a number of commissioners of prison, and I think they were prison chiefs at the time. And one of the concerns that they raise is the issue of a second chance, especially for businesses in St. Kitts and Nevis. Second chance. Well, they don't do background checks, but obviously we live in a small society.
Yes.
Police send out their press releases with John Doe being charged for possession of marijuana or John Doe charged for killing this person. But while you are doing all of this in terms of elevate and trying to uplift the at-risk young people, there's still this stigma attached, and getting those people into the work environment has been a challenge. And also, even though many of them are seeking to go into small businesses, down the road, a lot of them run into the challenge of actually being able to manage their money, so their businesses might fall 3,
Yeah.
4 years down the line, and they might end up in the private sector. So how's the government working to change this negative perception of those people who are in prison? Because I've heard many of them 10 CXC subjects, many of them attain their bachelor's degree, master's degrees.
Well, it's a good question. It is a government question, but it's also a general society question. What are we doing as a whole, as a society, to try to remove that stigma? But it's also a question for the prisoners themselves. What are you doing when you come out to be accountable? We talk a lot in our citizen security about restorative justice. Restorative justice exists. It's on our books. It's in our juvenile legislation. Restorative justice, a lot of the times when people commit crime, they come out, sometimes in the cases, I'll just use an area that I used to work in, sexual abuse, right? So somebody goes in for sexually abusing somebody, they're released from the prison, nobody tells the victim they're released from the prison, they meet their perpetrator on the road, nobody really prepares anybody, nobody says sorry, there's nothing in terms of how do you restore the confidence in those people? How do you restore faith? So one of the mandates of our citizen security secretariat is looking at more restorative justice options. I think people think that out there, like, this is a brand new thing that we're doing. It's not a brand new thing. It's just we've never really had, from as high as the Prime Minister's office, an interest in looking at citizen security and crime and violence in this way. That it is a lot of contributors, so it needs to be attacked from all different areas, all different angles, So it's like a combination of the government. What we can do is not discriminate at the government. So some of those persons work in government. We don't discriminate at the government level. And you're right, a lot of persons come out of prison with education. A lot of male prisoners. Now they've actually changed it with the new commissioner, and now females can also get access to the same things. But in the law, that wasn't possible. Minister Phillip actually went to make amendments to that because she thought, well, why are the women not getting any work as the Minister of Gender Affairs? They're not able to go out on work detail. They're not getting the same access to the resources. So they do come out, and people in the public, the private sector, like, they put in the work. A lot of those men have associate degrees. Some have 10, 12 subjects. If you didn't know that they had been in prison, you would have hired them. So it's really for you to say if I'm going to give a second chance. But as I said, it's also for them to show that they're going to work hard towards a second chance, because it's not an easy adjustment to come out of prison into regular life, especially if you've been there for a long time. And for us as the government, just to ensure that people are not discriminated against, and to make sure that we put into practice some policies that exist, and also that we create more programs so that people can see that. And then also it's public relations, which I don't think really we think about so much as government. People go about doing their work, and people are like, oh, we don't have something for that. Sometimes I sit in a meeting and they say, oh, we need this. I say, oh, no, we have that. And they say, oh, we need this. Like, no, we have that. And they say, what about this? I say, oh, no, we do that. But people are like, well, how come we don't know you do that? Somebody asked me this week, like, when we travel, I said, I'm so tired. When I travel, I'm so tired. They said, what do you mean? I said, well, people think that you go out, you travel, you go and you go and you lime. Like, you show up, you have a meeting, and then you spend all day shopping. And I travel, I see a hotel, a conference room, and an airplane. I see a lot of beautiful airports and a lot of beautiful conference rooms and some decent hotels, But we work from 7 a.m. till 10 p.m. So we have a 7 a.m. meeting. We go through the whole day. Every time there's a space, we fill with a bilateral, which is like a meeting with different groups or countries. Sometimes it's like, okay, now we have dinner at 8. We have a meeting at dinner. It's like, you think, oh, we're all eating dinner together? No, it's a dinner meeting. So you start a day. The other day we went to CARICOM. We started at 7 a.m. We finished at 1 a.m. So I think people don't really know. So a lot of it is also public relations. But when you're just doing the work, you don't always think about advertising the work that you're doing. So a lot of things already exist in the program. So government just has to make sure that people have an understanding of what exists already so they can have access to those programs as well.
I like how you put that there. People believe you travel and you're on the beach somewhere. And
listen,
you're like,
I tell it's work abroad. And people say, what does that mean? I say it's work abroad because it's not that you're, in fact, it's more work. When I travel, I find and home it's a lot of work. The Prime Minister has a lot of ministries for one prime minister, so it means he has to move for each ministry. And then at home, we have a lot of departments as well. But when we travel, it's a lot of international work. Like, we're just about to head to UNGA, and the UN General Assembly is like the Olympics of international diplomacy. We prepare for it from March every year, and every day that we're gone, we meet from 7. We're here, people saying we have this, oh, we can't, it's a conflict, but we can maybe come to this meeting for 30 minutes, and then we have to leave because we have this in PM speaking, and then we have to leave because we have this in PM speaking, and then we have to leave because we have this important meeting about this with this international partner, and then we have to meet with these people because we have an agreement that we need to solidify, and then we have to meet over here because we want our people to have visas to get into that country. It's a lot of work, but I think because people don't really understand it, I understand the perception. It's like, oh, they're out there and they're doing the most. But really, it's just establishing the relationships, especially as a newer government. And as we're trying to put our footprint to tell everybody we're open and we're ready for business. And St. Kitts is ripe and ready for business. So it just takes a little bit more work.
Exactly. But I guess the bottom line is, the PR, the public is not getting the full understanding. And I think, and I'm not faulting the current administration. I think a lot of the administrations prior to this one, they've not fully engaged the public in terms of what the government does. You come back, the Prime Minister's going to have a press conference, he's going to explain it, but the public still do not necessarily fully understand that you're in a meeting from 6 until 12.
I do not.
Right, because I can attest, even when we travel on assignments, you talk about UNGA, right? We're going to be present at UNGA, right? And you have these meetings to cover.
Never end.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very difficult. But I wanted to touch quickly because we're going to wrap the first half of the program in a bit. But I want to get from you in terms of actual citizen security. This whole issue about crime and violence. That is the big headline here in St. Kitts. And to be honest, a lot of people have been playing politics with this specific topic. Right. Let's start there first before we break for the news. What is the government's approach? Because we've been hearing a lot of press conferences, a lot of discussions, a lot of approaches. What is the government doing in terms of crime and violence?
Okay, well, I know PM has been talking about crime and violence and a public health approach. But I don't think people have really understood what a public health approach means. I think they thought, because we put a lot of work into getting people to better understand, that it meant like people commit crime because they have health problems or they have mental health problems. That's actually not at all what it is. What it is looking holistically at the problem, just like, PM is a doctor. And so, it's like, it's much easier. It's interesting that, okay, I'm 24 years, for people who know me. This year, September 2nd, I celebrate 24 years in the service. And I've been a guidance counselor. I've worked in juvenile justice. I worked in social development, all these different areas. If you work in those areas, teachers, I've been a teacher. If you work in those areas, I've been a counselor. I worked in NGOs. So if you work in all of those areas, which a lot of people here are experts in those areas, you could see where the problems come from. You know where the problems are coming from. You even have an idea of the solutions, but there's just not really been a political will to look at the problem as a holistic problem, because that's the only way we're really going to address it. Otherwise, it's just like putting a Band-Aid on a gaping wound, because there's going to be somewhere where there's a blockage that's going to affect this affects this. So if you think about like a human body, I'll use a different example, and you get and your heart is sick. Your heart didn't start sick. The organs feeding into your heart were sick. How did you heal those organs? It's a combination of all the different things that lead into the crime. So what we're trying to look at now as a government and the Citizen Security Secretariat is where are the different areas that we could improve to address the actual problem of citizen security. Because it's not just a problem of men and women getting shot and killed. It's a problem of domestic violence, sexual abuse, education, finding things for our children to do. If you think about it in St. Kitts, what is it for teenagers and children to do? Nothing but what adults do, right? So then we're like, oh, our kids are all smoking weed. They're all drinking alcohol and going to parties. Well, that's the culture. Our kids come to the party. Sometimes your kid comes to the party with you. Sometimes you see kids on the strip at 11 and 12 o'clock in the night. You're thinking, what are they doing? Where are their parents? So it's a combination of different things. So the Citizen Security Secretary actually has members from different ministries. Also, we have the chamber, and we've just also put our UN representative on that committee. So you've got education on the committee. You've got youth on the committee. The chair is actually the minister, Iceline Phillip. She's a co-chair with Dr. Isbin Williams, who everybody knows who Dr. Isbin Williams is. We have Dr. Richardson, who spoke the other day about violence as a public health initiative. She's been working in that area for over 25 years. Then we've got youth, we've got members of the public, we've got education, social services, national security. There's so many. So all the different areas that feed into citizen security all in one place. So when we're able to say, okay, this is what we're doing. Oh, we're doing that. Let's not duplicate that effort. Okay, this is what's needed over there. Okay, what's going on there? There's a blockage. Why is there a blockage there? Okay, well, when we get here, we don't have enough counselors. Okay, so then the need is for us to get some more, also National Counseling Center. So, and drug council is just, we've just been added the drug council. So then that means we don't have enough counselors. So where's the gap in the system? That we need more counselors to deal with this. So how can we address that? So the other day we realized we don't have enough counselors. So the counseling service is overextended. People think people don't go to counseling, but you need it. So we trained 26 community-based leaders in family and a family counseling model that helps you, a practical model that helps you to speak to persons in your community and young people from a strength-based model. So you look at a family, yes, you can see there's problems. They got 6 kids, they got a lot of bills, but how did you manage with your 6 kids for 20 years? What are the strengths of your family? Instead of pointing out to people all the things they're doing wrong, what are the things you're doing right? And how can we work on those things and then use those strengths to improve these things? So we're looking at the best practices, but we're looking at it now holistically. Oh, so that's what they're doing. Okay, this is how we can help over here. Oh, this is where this gap is. Okay, the police are dealing with suppression. Okay, what happens with the children? Like I said, with the children of people that end up in prison. Okay, so what happens? So what the government is trying to do is look at the problem holistically and fill the gaps that so far have kept us from achieving the goal, which is for our citizens to feel the safest and to alleviate some of the conditions that lead to us not feeling safe. So even with each of our consultations, during the consultations, we're taking data, because how will you know how people feel if you don't ask people? And also this idea that the government has all the answers is not a real thing. So really, sometimes even when a crime is committed, the police are like, we got this, but everybody on the street know what happened to the crime. The police are investigating, but everybody on the street has the story, you know? So often, and even with the solution, we create this solution, they sound, so, you know, we could have done this better if we done it like this. So what we're trying to do is just engage the public to ask them, what are your solutions? What are the problems that you see in your community? What are the things that you're doing already? What are the strengths you have already? What are the things that we could be doing better? So really that's what the 90 days is about, really getting a lot of consultations in and talking about it. Because in St. Kitts and Nevis and right across the region, maybe the world, nobody talks about these things unless, as you said, it's in a politically polarizing way. Oh, because you didn't do, and you didn't do, and you didn't do, and you didn't do. That's not solving anything. So we need to bring everybody to the table. It's not the Labour Party's country. It's not the People's Actions Movement's country. It's not the People's Labour Party country. It's all of our country. And it's not going to help us if we're not all working together towards the solutions, not just politically, but also in the private sector, in the public sphere, just your regular community, even so small as your family. You know, so like this week we have Coney Island. People say, oh, it's just Coney Island. But it's just not Coney Island. Coney Island was very intentional because we sat down and thought, you know, it's independence. What can we do that families can do together? Yeah, it's great to have lecture series and these things, but what can we do that get people out with their families just to enjoy time together? Because since COVID, we don't really go out so much with our families, you know. Are we having more picnics? What community events can we have? Elevate had a dad competition, best dad competition. You would ever believe how much participants were like, oh, we're having a dad competition, and people start to nominate dads because they're fathers too. So why can't we recognize good fathers, good mothers, good? So it's just trying to wrap our programs and our services and our activities around the big goal of citizen security and letting each person do their part and making sure that there's not blockages for each person doing their part, right?
I like how you added that part there, families, and not just a discussion, because one of my guests that I had on probably a couple of weeks back made the point that even though we're talking about and discussing the whole topic of crime and violence, we're not going to those people who are impacted, those people who are the ones actually feeling the impact of crime and violence, right? And it's good to have the lecture, it's good to have these town hall meetings, it's good to have these consultations. But what about the families? And I think that initiative, having families come together, spend time with their children in a specific setting is actually a good initiative to help build family, build bond, especially those parents, the young people who have kids now, children. Having that setting rather than you'd be home and you getting all grumpy and fretty and all of that. I think that's a good initiative.
Yeah, I think it's really important. And I think that we need to start thinking about families more and normalizing healthy relationships and normalizing balance and normalizing doing things like today is, I think, National Caribbean Health Day. Like, this is a good opportunity for us. Like, get up this week. What can you do for your health? Maybe this week you agree that you're going to sleep 8 hours a day. That's excellent for your mental health. It's very good for your family. You know what we're like when we're tired and hungry? Make sure we're eating better and our kids are eating better. People don't think it matters, but when you feed your kids a lot of preservatives and junk food and soda and things with color, it affects them. It affects their brains and their development, their behavior, their sleep patterns, and that affects the whole family. So sometimes it's the things that we don't think that we can each do something, but really we can each do something. How about when you get up to go walk this week, you take your kids with you? We're going to get up in the morning at 6:30 this week because it's Caribbean Health Week, and we're going to walk together 3 days this week. Or, we're going to go to Coney Island. Or maybe we'll go to the movies together if we can. Or maybe we'll just sit down as a family and eat a meal together. Let's sit down and eat a meal, because even small things like that. I was at the East Basseterre. They had a consultation on crime and security. It was excellent, by the way. East Basseterre, thank you for inviting me. And one of the things that came up was that, what is our culture? Like, well, what is our culture in terms of family? What's our family culture? Remember, we used to sit down and eat meals together? Who sits down and eats meals together? In my family, we still eat meals together. We still pray over meals. Who's praying with their families in the morning? Who's sitting down to find out what's going on with their kids? When's the last time you checked your child's homework? Have you visited your child's school? Do you listen to your children? Are you listening for understanding? Are they respecting you? What are the values that we're instilling in our children as a culture? What are we teaching people about what it means to work, to be productive citizens, to add back to country? What about country above self? What about that? Is everything transactional? What are we teaching people about transactional relationships? Everything that people want has to be money now. Everything is transactional. You give me, I give you. Is that the values? So we have to start looking to what our cultural values are, and start reframing how we do our families. I like to tease, they make fun of me all the time about Coach Carter. I think St. Kitts is like a Coach Carter movie. Do you remember Coach Carter? Coach Carter had to make some tough decisions.
Yeah.
To me, my RPM is like our Coach Carter. You got to make some tough decisions, but those decisions have to be made for the better of the whole group. And even though it's going to be a hard struggle for a little bit, because we are transitioning, it's not going to be perfect right away. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to fix the mistakes, but we're going to do it together. But if everybody in the community is working together, the parents are working, the students are working, the kids are working, if everybody's working together towards the same goal, we can get there. And so that's how I feel. We're 50,000 people, and now we have the political will and the public support, which has been overwhelming. Even seeing people's consultations coming up, it's like, look at the initiative people are taking. I think that we're ripe right now as a people for change in that area. And so I think that I feel really hopeful. That's what you said, Citizen Secure. I was like, oh, I'm so excited, because I feel like it's 24 years of our work that now we're seeing, and longer. Oh my gosh, this is a thing that we could actually make a dent in. We could actually set a good model for this. We can make a dent in this. And so it's very exciting time for me, and I think a lot of people that have worked in the field, to say, wow, like, now's a chance for us to really address a lot of these conditions that lead to us not feeling as safe as we should. Mm-hmm.
Okay, P.S. We have to take a break now to bring the headline news, the midday newscast, and then we'll continue with this discussion. I find this very interesting in terms of the government's approach to dealing with crime and violence, because, like I said, we've been talking about this topic for quite some time, and it's really, really on the minds of the people at the moment in terms of, safety and so forth. And I think you've brought a lot of insightful information in terms of what the government has been doing to tackle crime. I know the Elevate program has been one of those programs which has been talked about for quite some time, and you've given some critical information. I think the public has better understanding now of what exactly the Elevate program is right now. But we have to break now to bring the midday news, and then we'll continue at the bottom of the hour.
Thank you, Jermaine.
You found the sound. 98.9. Win FM.
We now bring you the headline news. The headline news is brought to you by Caribbean Alliance, The Grange, and Caribou.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib, it's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
Did you know that the Grange Healthcare Facility is the first purpose-built, non-governmental healthcare organization on St. Kitts? It's situated at Otley's, 7 miles east of Basseterre in beautifully landscaped surroundings. The Grange has a team of highly trained professionals and provides care that's rated as being comparable with UK and North American standards. The Grange offers varied accommodations to suit your individual needs, and our all-inclusive packages make the cost of care per hour the most competitive on the island. Services include convalescent care for all ages, daycare facilities for older adults, rehabilitation services, and training and continuing education for healthcare providers. For more information, call 466-5525 or 465-8020. Fax 466-8221 or email thegrangehealth@gmail.com or visit our website at www.grangehealthcarefacility.com. When it comes to the important things in life, your health, your education, your choice of a life partner, and of course your insurance provider, only the best will do. Caribbean Alliance Insurance is the only insurance company in the Eastern Caribbean with an A excellent rating. We have a robust 3-tier reinsurance strategy that protects our policyholders from multiple catastrophes, even if they occur in quick succession. We spread our risks over 18 territories, ensuring minimal impact to individual territories when a disaster strikes. We provide an excellent claims experience. Claim settlement is usually between 24 to 48 hours. Our A excellent rating means that you are more secure with us. Contact us for motor, property, marine, public liability, employer's liability, and other policies. Dalil Walwyn, people you can trust. Local agent for Caribbean Alliance Insurance. Tomorrow secured.
With the WINNFM Midday News, I am Kevon Brown. Our top stories.
St. Kitts Nevis police intervene in brawl at amusement park. Free movement in the OECS. Citizens' rights examines key issues as member states review model OECS contingent rights bill. Rose Hall sugar workers in Guyana stage protest. OECS Director General urges completion of national census at inaugural Joint Council of Ministers meeting in St. Kitts and Nevis. Internationally, flooded Nigerian city, infrastructure damage hampering rescue efforts.
Now the details.
On September 13th, law enforcement officers were forced to act after a brawl ensued on the opening day of the amusement park. Police confirmed that while New Vibes Band was performing, a few young women got into an altercation. The altercation did not disrupt the amusement park's operation, and New Vibes Band was allowed to continue its performance without any further incident. Quote, members of the security force who were present at the event swiftly intervened and brought the situation under control, said the police. The parties involved in the incident were taken to the police command post and subsequently discharged. The police explained, quote, such occurrences are not unusual and the security forces were well prepared to handle the situation efficiently, end Quote, the Independence 41 Committee organized the amusement park, which will run for 3 weeks from September 13th to October 6th, 2024. On September 4th, 2024, the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States OECS Commission hosted a webinar titled Free Movement in the OECS, A Citizen's Right. The event focused on the legal frameworks, socioeconomic benefits, and challenges associated with the free movement of citizens within the Eastern Caribbean Economic Union, ECEU. The webinar addressed the provisions of the revised Treaty of Bastille and the OECS Contingent Rights Policy, which outline the rights of citizens of the OECS Protocol member states to live, work, and access services across the region. The discussion covered access to social programs and services, travel and employment across member states, economic benefits for employers and the private sector, the role of free movement in disaster resilience, and regional collaboration. Efforts to enforce these rights through national law are underway via the Model OECS Contingent Rights Bill, currently under review by the Protocol member states. The panel was moderated by Dr. Wendy Grenard, Chair of the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences at St. George's University, Grenada, and included the following experts: Attorney General, the Honorable Garth Wilkin, and Minister of Justice and Legal Affairs in St. Kitts and Nevis; Dr. Valda Henry, Deputy Governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank; Gordon Charles, President of the OECS Business Council; Natasha Greaves, Head of Office, International Organization for Migration, IOM, Dominica; and Dr. Clarence Henry, Acting Head of the Regional Integration Unit, OECS Commission. The webinar featured a presentation by Dr. Natasha Mortley, Senior Research Fellow at the University of the West Indies and Special Advisor on Migration to the OECS. She emphasized the importance of data collection to support migration policy, noting that better data can help inform decision-making and improve the implementation of free movement across the region. The panelists discussed various aspects of the free movement framework, including the legal foundation for the RTP, revised Treaty of Bastille, the economic benefits for the region, and the social implications of free movement. They noted that the Model OECS Contingent Rights Bill seeks to address the legislative gaps currently affecting citizens' free movement between member states. Joel Richards, Officer in charge of the Economic Affairs and Regional Integration Division at the OECS Commission, noted the importance of the Model OECS Contingent Rights Bill in facilitating the removal of barriers to free movement. He emphasized the need for citizens to understand their rights to ensure the policies are fully implemented. Quote, the Model OECS Contingent Rights Bill, currently under review by the Protocol member states, is a step in making these rights a reality for all citizens of the OECS, end quote. Richards also pointed out that awareness of these rights is critical for citizens to advocate for their implementation. The Model OECS Contingent Rights Bill is expected to be presented to the OECS Legal Affairs Committee, LAC, by the end of 2024. Panelists reiterated their organization's commitment to supporting the legislative process and improving awareness of the free movement framework. The OECS Business Council, the International Organization for Migration, and the ECCB are among the stakeholders involved in promoting the full implementation of free movement policies.
In regional news,
OECS Director General urges completion of national census at inaugural Joint Council of Ministers meeting in St. Kitts and Nevis. DVS St. Lucia has details.
Speaking at the opening ceremony, Dr. Didicus Jules, OECS Director General, said the theme of this year's meeting, regional development and sustainability through quality education and social empowerment, was not only timely, but spoke to the shared mission of improving the quality of life for every citizen of the OECS. Dr. Didicus Jules says that education has the power to shape futures, but the current systems face challenges like outdated curricula, limited resources, and threats from climate change and economic shifts. However, he says these challenges are also opportunities for innovation and transformation.
We must reimagine education as a tool for resilience, preparing our students not just for the jobs of today, but to become the shapers of their conscious destiny and not be the victims of a cruel world. It is not just about the jobs of today, but about the challenges of tomorrow. Our ongoing efforts in the OECS to build a digital learning ecosystem are a powerful step towards this. We are not merely modernizing our schools and seeking to make schools cool. We are safeguarding the future of our children.
Likewise, Dr. Jules says resilience is also needed in the health systems. He says that the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic showed that the strength of health systems is directly tied to the well-being of communities.
Social empowerment is the glue that binds these efforts together. We cannot speak of progress without addressing the inequalities that divide us. When we empower every individual to fully participate in social, economic, and political life, we create a society where opportunity is not a privilege but a right. And this empowerment is the foundation of sustainable human development. And it requires a multifaceted approach, strong legislation, active participation from all stakeholders, and a regional commitment to inclusivity.
Additionally, Dr. Jules says accurate data is crucial for social empowerment. He says that the country poverty assessment, CPA, and census data are essential for measuring progress towards Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, monitoring social programs, ensuring governance accountability, and identifying and supporting families in need. With this in mind, Dr. Jules says several OECS member states have yet to complete their national census.
Several of our member states are yet to complete their national census, delayed in part by the challenges of COVID-19. This census data is the backbone of policy making, reflecting the realities of our populations and ensuring that resource allocation is equitable and effective.
The Organization of the Eastern Caribbean States, OECS 9th Council of Ministers, Health, Human and Social Development and Education meetings is being held in St. Kitts. Ministers from Education, Health and Social Development hope to collaborate to create integrated policies that enhance citizen well-being and empowerment. For the DBS News World, Miriam Montoot reporting.
Rose Hall sugar workers in Guyana stage protest. Guyana News Source reports.
Scores of sugar workers attached to the Rose Hall Sugar Estate downed their tools in protest of the firing of two managers at the location. The workers gathered outside the estate this morning and refused to begin work, while raising their concerns over the firing of the production manager and the head of the laboratory unit. After a few hours in their quiet protest, many of the workers returned to their jobs, while others decided to take the day off and headed home. Efforts by News Source to get a comment from the CEO of Gaisuko, Paul Chang, was futile. The Guyana Agricultural and General Workers Union has offered no information about the strike action. There are more than 1,000 persons currently employed at the Rose Hall Estate, which was reopened last year as part of the government's push to develop the sugar industry. Since taking office, the government has pumped billions of dollars into Gaisuko, but the sugar industry continues to operate at a big loss, with billions reported in losses over the past few years. There have also been some management changes, but the production problems persist, with sugar production falling way below its target.
We now bring you these international reports.
Rescued from the floodwaters and now in shock. 4 days of dehydration and hunger have taken their toll. Aid workers fear she may fall into coma soon if she doesn't receive medical attention. Right behind her, Yagana Bukar and the baby she gave birth to 24 hours before, surrounded by a sea of water.
I went into labor the day after the dam broke. I gave birth to the baby on Wednesday. The clothes on me and on the baby are all borrowed. Right now, I can't produce enough milk for the baby.
Those who've made it to safety say they left behind dozens, possibly hundreds of people trapped in their homes. The slow pace of rescue and relief is leading to frustration and in some places anger.
There's no water, no food and no shelter. Homes have been destroyed. No one's helped us with anything. Officials wait for us to bring out victims and then they use them for a photo op.
On Tuesday, a section of the Alau Dam gave way, sending a huge torrent of water into the city of Maiduguri. 4 days later, thousands are still unreachable.
The receding waters are slowly revealing the magnitude of this disaster. Many parts of Maiduguri remain underwater. People have been trapped in their homes for 4 days and have not received food or water.
Emergency officials say they have received more boats to help rescue the victims. But locals say it may be too little too late for many of the victims. The Nigerian military and civilian volunteers have been leading rescue operations because government agencies were ill-prepared.
Distressed people are being sent to the camps. There are several camps that are being opened.
While hundreds of thousands are moved to temporary accommodation, hundreds of thousands more are desperate for help. Officials are still touchy about the casualty numbers from this tragedy. They say they are focusing on rescuing the thousands who are still trapped, but reaching them remains a challenge. Ahmed Idris, Al Jazeera, Maiduguri.
Sir Keir Starmer says talks with President Biden in Washington have been wide-ranging and productive, but wouldn't say whether he'd persuaded the US to allow Ukraine to fire long-range missiles into Russia. President Zelensky has repeatedly called for permission to use the weapons on targets across the border. He claims it is the only way to end the war. Our political editor Chris Mason has sent this report from the White House.
I think the next few weeks and months could be crucial.
What does President Biden make of Russia's threats against the West?
I don't think much about Vladimir Putin.
This is the Blue Room of the White House. The President, the Prime Minister and their team spoke here for about an hour and a half. The war in Ukraine dominated the conversation. Afterwards, Sir Keir Starmer wouldn't be drawn on whether he'd persuaded the President that authorising Ukraine to fire Western missiles at Russia was a good idea. Instead, he said,
well, there's only one reason we're having these discussions, and that is because Putin has illegally invaded Ukraine. The quickest way to resolve this, obviously, lies through what Putin actually does, because it's for him to end this. But we are having the discussion. We've stood with Ukraine. Ukraine has a right to self-defense. And we've stood united, not just with our allies here in the US, but across with our NATO allies. That's very, very important to us.
The long-range Anglo-French missiles Ukraine would love to fire into Russia. The UK making the argument to allies it's a request that should be granted. They rely on American satellite systems to work. You might ask why the Prime Minister has been so keen to dash here to visit a president who we know will be gone in just a few months' time. His answer is there are urgent issues that need addressing now, not least this question of missiles. The President has been sceptical about Ukraine being able to fire them into Russia, fearing it would be dangerous. This is the reality of the war grinding on in Ukraine, a country desperate for ongoing help, its allies weighing up how best to do it, and at what cost. Chris Mason, BBC News, in Washington.
Well, let's get more on this from our North America correspondent Jenny Kumar.
We haven't had a huge amount of detail in terms of what was actually discussed, but there was a short statement that was issued, and that said that the Allies reaffirmed their unwavering support for Ukraine. They also expressed deep concern about Iran and North Korea's provision of lethal weapons to Russia and China's support of Russia's defence industrial base. Now, as we saw in Chris's report, Sir Keir Starmer gave a short interview after that meeting, and he refused to be drawn on whether a decision had been made to lift those restrictions on enabling Western missiles to strike deep into Russia, and he insisted that the discussion was wide-ranging, was about strategy and not about a specific capability. But for the Western allies, it's a delicate balance between deciding the impact of inaction versus action, and also what Russia's response would be to that.
Jenny Kumar in Washington a little earlier, and we'll be getting the view from Kyiv later in the programme with our Ukraine correspondent James Waterhouse. But first, Vygoda Ushkarkush is a former foreign minister for Lithuania. He was also an EU ambassador to Russia, and I asked him for his response to Putin's red lines on missiles.
Well, I think first of all, it's important, and that what I used to do back in 2013, 2017, during the first war of Crimea and occupation and eastern Ukraine, is to remind again and again that it was Russia who started the war, who invaded Ukraine and violated all the red lines which are established by international law, and tried to undermine that narrative what Vladimir Putin is trying to promulgate and show to international audience and to the Russians as if Russia is a victim.
What role would an ambassador play when we do get this war of words constantly developing between Russia and the bloc that you're trying to represent? How would you step in there?
Well, there's a twofold. First is public communication, which is hard in Russia because it's so much controlled by the state media. But still, I used to go to the interviews and talk shows, even if they are, orchestrated, and try to do what I said right now. It's Russia who bears responsibility. They violated international law. They attacked an innocent and peaceful population of Ukraine, and they bear all responsibility. At the same time, I would communicate to the member states and to the allies like United States and United Kingdom, which is not anymore a member of the European Union. It is important to support wholeheartedly, including with long-range weaponry, Ukraine. If we want to see Russia fails, and before entering any negotiations, escalation is unavoidable, so that Putin would feel the harm and pain.
On the streets of the Indonesian capital, disappointment and disbelief. Supriyono had worked at a factory that made gas stoves for almost 3 decades.
I feel very, very sad. Just as I'm approaching retirement, it turns out the company's gone bankrupt.
His colleagues have gathered to protest, but the factory director says the business had been struggling with weak demand.
In 2019, the factory experienced a steep decline in product because people's purchasing power went down, and until now, we've had difficulties.
In 2019, more than 57 million Indonesians were classified as middle class. The latest data indicates that number has dropped by about 9.5 million. Experts say the decline is mostly due to increasing numbers of layoffs and fewer job opportunities. Some sectors, like the textiles industry, are seeing their worst redundancies in more than a decade.
Indonesia is one of the world's largest consumer markets, with private consumption a key driver of economic growth. It accounts for more than half of the country's GDP, and that's largely powered by the middle class.
Economists say the shrinking middle class may make it more challenging for the government to achieve its target of Indonesia becoming a high-income nation by 2045.
If the consumption, private consumption growth is not increasing, so meaning that this, drop in middle-income class population, meaning that the source of economic growth in Indonesia is also weakening. So I think it is more difficult for Indonesia to achieve high economic growth with this situation.
The government considers those who spend between $130 to $640 a month to be middle class. Those just below this bracket are classified as aspiring middle class, meaning they are more vulnerable to economic shocks and are less likely to spend.
For us, my husband still can't find another job and his salary has not increased. And my son is still unemployed. Just meeting our daily needs is unaffordable.
President Joko Widodo says the declining middle class is not a problem that's unique to Indonesia. It is something affecting many countries. He blames a global economic slowdown. Incoming President Prabowo Subianto is due to take office in October and has promised to boost economic growth and create 19 million jobs. For Supriano, he can't help but look back to when times were easier, when his children would ask him for cash to buy snacks and when he had the money to indulge them. Jessica Washington, Al Jazeera, Jakarta.
There are millions of heavy goods trucks driving on roads all over the world. But why are so few of them running on electricity? To find out, we're in Södertälje, near Sweden's capital, and home to one of Europe's biggest truck manufacturers. They're on the long road to changing an industry that's having a big impact on our planet.
The biggest and largest change that our industry has for over 100 years. We went from horses to vehicles, actually.
Now trundling off the end of their production line is an increasing number of electric trucks, and Scania eventually wants that to be every vehicle they make. Switching to electric vehicle production hasn't been easy. One of the biggest challenges is the weight of the batteries. They had to reinforce the concrete and bring in new equipment to be able to lift them, and that meant closing down the production line for 3 months.
There are several thousand new components into an electric vehicle. And also, what was very important during this time was to also cater for the reskilling of all our fantastic workforce, so that they could be able also to mount electrical vehicles, just as they do for internal combustion engines.
Unlike for cars, this move to electric trucking is going at a very slow pace. So what motivates a company to make such a big gear shift?
Hi, how are you doing? Welcome on board. Thank you, nice to meet you.
I'm hitching a lift from the man with the keys to this organisation.
This company have been part of the problem for 130 years almost, a very long time producing those trucks that were emitting the emissions that were not good for the planet. Is there guilt behind the change?
Yeah, I think there is guilt. There is the notion that we want to be able to see our kids and our grandchildren in the eyes and be able to say we knew it and we choose to do something about it, instead of just trying to continue to optimize profits and do the things that companies do. And there is also a notion of coming early to the insight that this is the future competitiveness. You know, if you're lost into this journey, you're going to have a hell of a problem to compete, because at some point everyone will understand. And that has been really important, because you have to have that as a company when you are to convince your supervisory board, your owners, and everyone around you in the ecosystem that you need to walk down this path.
Not only did Scania stop output for several months, they also built this battery factory right next to where the trucks are assembled. We're in one of the most high-tech parts of this site, where lots of robots are assembling the batteries that will end up in the trucks. It's quite mesmerising to watch. These batteries weigh an incredible 4,000 kilos. That presents lots of challenges for those driving them. There are still lots of questions, though, about using battery electric. Is it powerful enough to move these heavy trucks? Is there the charging infrastructure to allow them to go where they need to go? And at 3 times the cost of a normal truck, are they a sound investment that companies will get their money back on? And part of the debate has also been about other ways to power trucks, with some in the industry suggesting hydrogen fuel cells are the best solution for green trucking.
Battery electric is the most cost efficient, so therefore we believe in this. And also, it is possible to build the infrastructure and everything around it.
So what do you think? Shall we go for a ride?
I think we should, let's do it.
All right, let's go. It's completely silent. And it's strong. Torque is amazing.
You must still have a hard job, though, convincing companies and drivers to make the switch.
Sure, there is a lot of skepticism. I'm traveling a lot in my job, and I was also to Finland here a couple of weeks ago, which I would have expected to be a market ready to transition quickly. But huge skepticism, you know, will this really work? Can it stand the temperatures of northern Finland, you know, the home of Santa Claus? Really cold, really tough drives, really high vehicle weights. And I understand that. We need to take that on with facts. And then the best way to convince customers is, as always, when something is new, and this is a very traditional industry we're in, so we're used to that, but when there is something new, let them test.
By 2030, Scania wants half of the trucks they sell to be electric and fully battery operated by 2050. But that is still a long way off.
I certainly think this journey could be much accelerated if the legislature would be more active in supporting the change. This is our biggest challenge now. The vehicle is here. I mean, what we sit in now is a 40-tonner. It's European long haulage, but we're also supplying 60, 64, 74 and 80-tonners. I spend a lot of time in Brussels, in Berlin, in Stockholm, all over to try to convince politicians that this is a good thing. You know, this is not just for the environment. It's also great to drive our environment.
The road to green trucking is slow. There's still a lot of work to do for manufacturers across the industry trying to convince buyers to make this switch.
Wall Street's main indexes closed higher on Friday as investors increased their bets on a bigger interest rate cut from the Federal Reserve at its policy meeting next week. The Dow climbed almost 0.75%, the S&P 500 added roughly 0.5%, and the Nasdaq gained more than 0.6%. Bets on the size of the Fed's rate cut have been volatile, but were roughly split by late Friday between a 25 basis point cut and a larger 50 basis point cut. Eric Lynch is managing director at Scharf Investments.
It's reflective of what we've seen since the third quarter started, which is a lot of consternation from investors about where the economy is going, where inflation is going to land, and what the Fed can do in terms of rate cutting. And so stocks, the VIX, and now the CME FedWatch tool is jumping all over the place. In the wake of the CPI report on Wednesday, because core inflation was accelerating month over month and still relatively high year over year, very sticky, that probability of a 50 points cut was 15%. Now it's above 50. So I think it's just really indicating that investors really don't know which way the Fed's going to go and which way the economy is going to go.
Stocks on the move included Adobe, which finished down 8.5% after the Photoshop maker forecast fourth quarter earnings below estimates. Boeing shares sank more than 3.5% after its U.S. West Coast factory workers walked off the job on Friday as they overwhelmingly rejected a contract deal. And Uber shares rallied about 6.5% after the ride-hailing platform said it would bring autonomous ride-hailing to Austin, Texas and Atlanta in partnership with Alphabet's Waymo.
You are listening to the Midday News on WINNFM 98.9. The headlines?
St. Nevis police intervene in brawl at amusement park. Free movement in the OECS. Citizens' rights examines key issues as member states review model OECS contingent rights bill. Rose Hall sugar workers in Guyana stage protest. OECS Director General urges completion of national census at inaugural Joint Council of Ministers meeting in St. Kitts and Nevis. Internationally, flooded Nigerian city, infrastructure damage hampering rescue efforts.
Thank you for listening.
That was the WINNFM Headline News. The Headline News was brought to you by Caribbean Alliance, The Grange, and Cariboury.
When it comes to the important things in life, your health, your education, your choice of a life partner, and of course your insurance provider, only the best will do. Caribbean Alliance Insurance is the only insurance company in the Eastern Caribbean with an A excellent rating. We have a robust 3-tier reinsurance strategy that protects our policyholders from multiple catastrophes, even if they occur in quick succession. We spread our risks over 18 territories, ensuring minimal impact to individual territories when a disaster strikes. We provide an excellent claims experience. Claim settlement is usually between 24 to 48 hours. Our A excellent rating means that you are more secure with us. Contact us for motor, property, marine, public liability, employer's liability, and other policies. Dalil Walwyn, people you can trust. Local agent for Caribbean Alliance Insurance. Tomorrow secured. Did you know that the Grange Healthcare Facility is the first purpose-built, non-governmental healthcare organization on St. Kitts? It's situated at Otley's, 7 miles east of Basseterre in beautifully landscaped surroundings. The Grange has a team of highly trained professionals and provides care that's rated as being comparable with UK and North American standards. The Grange offers varied accommodations to suit your individual needs, and our all-inclusive packages make the cost of care per hour the most competitive on the island. Services include convalescent care for all ages, daycare facilities for older adults, rehabilitation services, and training and continuing education for healthcare providers. For more information, call 466-5525 or 465-8020. Fax 466-8221 or email thegrangehealth@gmail.com or visit our website at www.grangehealthcarefacility.com.
With over a century of perfection behind the Mackeson name, a smooth blend with perfect balance and richness, it's no wonder Mackeson Triple Stout has a legacy of perfection. Enjoy the world over. Introducing our new look with the same great taste. Mackeson. All hail the king.
Please drink responsibly.
Inter-Island Elevators is seeking an elevator technician. The elevator technician will be required to visit customers in St. Kitts and Nevis and service elevators according to best industry standards. Qualifications include high school diploma or equivalent, completion of an apprenticeship program or technical degree in a relevant field preferred, certification as an elevator technician, 2 or more years of experience working with elevator installation, maintenance or repair, and a driver's license. Apply to info@interislandelevators.com.
On October 11th, join us at the St. Kitts Marriott Resort for Shades of Earth, Women in the Spotlight of Climate Change. From 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., experience a powerful evening that explores the link between the global climate crisis and gender-based violence. Hosted by Garden of Rebirth, an empowerment center for women, this event features survivor stories, scientific insights, and theatrical performances that highlight the challenges faced by women in the Caribbean. Your contributions will help to establish a new counseling center, offering support to those in need. Be part of this meaningful movement for change. Get your tickets now at Digital Print Plus on Princess Street, or Garden of Rebirth's Facebook page, or via Chat Cash. Let's make a difference together.
At Dental Beginnings, where it all begins with your smile, we provide quality dental care, catering to the needs of the whole family. Where gentleness is our specialty and attention to detail is paramount. We offer cleanings, fillings, crown and bridge, root canals, extractions, digital x-rays, and sealants. Dental Beginnings, located at Victoria Road, Basseterre, St. Kitts. Call us at 869-668-1955 or 869-465-1951. Email us at dentalbeginnings@gmail.com or visit our Facebook page. Dental Beginnings. It all begins with a smile.
If you need protection, you need one who you can trust. To secure your investment, you need one who'll do you just. TDC Insurance, you're the one that you can trust. TDC Insurance, you're always safe with us. TDC Insurance is your go-to insurance company for all your insurance needs. We take pride in offering you the best solutions and ensuring our customers are fully satisfied. TDC Insurance, we take good care of you, guaranteeing you peace of mind. You're always safe with us.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib, it's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
And we are back here on Inside the News. I am German Abel sitting in today, and we have with us Permanent Secretary within the Office of the Prime Minister, who has direct responsibility for the Citizen Security Secretariat and the Elevate program, Ms. Naima Hazel. And we're discussing those two particular issues right now. That's what we've been discussing in the first half of the program. If you want to call in, ask questions, share your thoughts, the phone lines are open to do that as well. So, before we took the break, we were talking about this whole issue of citizen security and crime and violence. As we come back, what I wanted to get, and I think the public is a little bit skeptical about, is how is the entire peace program, I keep saying peace, the Elevate program transitioning into the whole fight with crime and violence. I know you talk about, the gang members and your training, and a lot of people have graduated and they've been placed in jobs. But the thing is, people are somehow equating what the transition, the transformation, the rebirth of this program to an increase in crime and violence right now. How is the government treating this particular issue?
Well, honestly, I think that it is just because I think that it's difficult for people not to see the two things to them connected, but they're not actually looking at the other factors. As I said to you earlier, yes, you can say we had, if you look at the statistics, USA just did a criminal dynamics study on St. Kitts and Nevis. And if you look at the statistics, you could actually go online. The presentation was Dr. C. Prasad. If you look at that, you would see we actually did have murders during COVID. I think that our memories are a little, skewed because it's the easiest way to look at things. But we did have murders, but we didn't have murders for a while. So I think we went from a period of having murders and then it being quiet and us feeling really good and safe because we didn't have any murders, because that's how we measure crime. And then now going back to murders, right? So it's easy to say, oh, it's the Elevate program. But really, it's not the Elevate program. And one of the issues, in a one way, people say, oh, it's the program, but it's actually the opposite. And I'm delicate in how I speak about it. Because I don't want to politicize the issue. But some of the decisions that were made in the peace program allowed there to be opportunities for persons whose maybe their intentions may have been good, but when you have a lot of extra money, you use your extra money to do extra things. And so I think that we don't see, I'm trying to find the most delicate way to say it. There's some things that happened in the previous program that created some of the challenges that we have now, right? I don't think it was the intention of the program. I don't even think it's the intention of the membership, right? But some of these things created, it's just human nature. That's the best way to say it. Some of these things just created some schisms that allowed an environment that might have allowed persons to have excess income that they might not have used in the right way. I'll say it like that.
So and now that the whole program has been rebirthed, everything is somewhat on a upward trajectory, and having the members who are part of these gangs, quote unquote, here again, passing through the program, do you foresee that, and this might be a difficult question for you to answer, but do you foresee that many of, and I don't know, there are many of the gang members who would have passed through, those people who were involved in criminal activities that would have passed through the program, have been able to elevate themselves, and you know, I guess what I want to ask you is, when do you guys expect to see maybe the fruits of this program?
I hope to see the fruits of the program at the end of 2 years. That's where we'd like it. That's when we're going to start reevaluating, looking at what we've done and what we could be doing differently. But I think some of the members under the program, people say, I get a lot from my members. Oh, the money used to be flowing freely. Oh, the money not flowing freely no more, Miss Hazel. The program's not working, right? But whose money was flowing freely, right? So if we think about the repercussions from the program that everybody swears was so great, it's the money was flowing freely, but it was somebody's money, right? So when you have members who are on Peace and Step and PAP, that means, which we had, that means that there are persons in the society who are not able to get PAP, which is now Lift, or Step, because somebody is in that space. So if one person's getting money and then they're using this money to pay this loan and to pay this, because that's really all they were taught. If you've never had any financial literacy, you get some money, you get a loan from the program, because the program under Peace used to give loans. So if you get a loan under the program and you don't know how to manage a loan, something you said before we started the break, what if you don't know how to do HR? You don't know how to budget. You don't know when you make your profits, how much you're supposed to put back into your business. There's a lot of things that come with, you could have a great hustle. You could be a very successful person at illegitimate business. It has a different set of rules. But the transition into legitimate business has a whole different set of rules and regulations, which can be a little bit intimidating. And so it's very easy to fall back in. Like, think about your favorite rapper, who's a rapper, but still belongs in a gang and is still now getting charges. So you have to think like it's a transition out of that lifestyle, right? So I think that some of those areas, I don't know if I'm answering your question because you have to repeat that for me more clearly.
You've actually answered the question, because and that last part that you spoke to, the actually legitimizing the business, I think that is where I think the concern lies, because even though you're making the money, you've left the program and you've started something, getting it legally registered, getting it legally certified, I think is the concern for many. And that is probably one of the ways that many of them fall through the cracks. Yes. Because now you have to start to pay taxes. Now you have to start to get certain initiatives in place that goes to the inland revenue and some of the government agencies.
Now you got to be in the, now you're in the system
right now. Right?
In the system,
hold on. I have a caller here. Caller, good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon, brother. How are you doing?
I am well. Caller?
I tell you, you must ask me, how am I, you know?
Okay, yeah, we're discussing crime and violence and the whole national security, the citizenship citizen security, and the Elevate program. We have with us the permanent secretary.
Yeah,
you can go ahead.
I've been listening with interest. Good afternoon, Ms. Hazel.
Good afternoon.
You know, I have been listening to, I heard you on Freedom.
Okay.
You and Commander Sutton.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, one thing, I admire what you're doing. But as you said, I think one of the weaknesses was the lack of public information.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yeah, because you had people, influencers, making statements which I suspect you can't call everybody criminal. No. You can't call everybody gunman. I mean, I was all over the court for that. But if you had begun to explain before, you might have said some people the public embarrassment. Because you seriously had these similar things Oh, all of them gangsters, them gunmen and whatnot. I said, Lord Jesus, everybody can be gunmen and so. Some people have good intention. You understand?
Yes. Yes. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, I used to do prison ministry for 16 years to the females. You know, you can't say, oh, them they were in jail, so. You give people a chance to change.
Yeah.
And you encourage them. But when you have this public demonstration, and it was a political issue, which it maybe if you had spoken before, it would have well some of that. You know, so I want to continue to do what you're doing.
Thank you.
And the people, they want to, well, you know, you spoke about the prison ministry and the people coming out. I mean, give them a chance. And I am glad for one that the females had a chance to come out.
So excited.
Yeah, I'm telling you, 16 years I went, you know, some of them in the, when I tell my Port Zante, they couldn't figure out that you left the pier and you left the seawater by the sun. And when I said, you know, there are shops, I said, I can't even imagine what it is like. And sometimes the Indians along, they have no idea what's going on outside.
No idea.
While the men come and go as they like. You know, so to all the prisoners and the superintendent, I admire the work they do with the prisoners. Give them a chance. Some will spoil it, but they will catch themselves, you know?
They'll catch themselves.
Yeah, and for all of you, please stop calling all the people gunmen and criminals. We are actually encouraging it, you know?
We are. We're actually self-fulfilling. We're giving them a self-fulfilling. Yeah.
No, there was one complaint though.
Okay.
This thing of mediation, somebody to go to. One complaint that the police, whoever used to do the conflict resolution, that is what I'm looking for. There was somebody that they could go to who was always involved, you know, and then they would go and try and reconcile groups. And it was said that the person who is now doing that work has informed them that he has no intention of coming to anybody. Anybody want that kind of service, they must come up to the camp.
I don't understand what you mean.
There was a police, I think what the name was. It was Adams who used to work with them. Who used to work with them?
There was actually a whole group of police that used to work with them on the committee, yes.
And if they learn, they said that they had this management group. This young man was talking on, I think it's Freedom, you know, on a station, saying that whenever they learned that there was conflict in certain areas, certain gangs, they would go out and speak to the parties and encourage them, you know. And they said that since you have this new elevate, whatever you call it, there is nobody with easy access that they could go to come and help to resolve the conflicts. Because once they're not going up in the camp.
Oh, okay. Well, to that answer, it's actually a very good statement.
What I just said, right?
Yeah, I heard you, but it's actually not actually true. We actually do have somebody who does psychosocial assessments with our, especially higher risk members. Just to get a good, we're actually getting a good understanding of some of the things that have got them to where they are, and understanding them better and their risk and their likelihood of being able to be rehabilitated. So that's something that can actually be measured. But then also, yeah, it's important. But then also, we don't send them up to the camp anymore. There's actually an office. So sometimes we do actually have meetings. We do still have meetings with some of the members in our office. To be fair, they always come. If you call them to say you want to resolve a conflict, they never say they're not coming. They always come to try to resolve the conflict. So it might look a little different, but it does still exist. But also, I think that there's a greater need. I actually think that more members need counseling. That's why we did the other training. Because the counseling services can't manage all the members. Like when I was a psychologist, I did have what I call OGs, like some older gangsters, you know, the ones that have been in the system for a long time. So I have had a lot of OGs used to come for counseling and talk about their issues. So I know there's a need. And also several of our supervisors, they will actually, when we started restructuring the program, they came back and they asked for that, for their people as well in their communities, that they needed more counseling for their communities, because it's a lot. I know we look at the outcomes, but I think we don't always understand some of the spaces that our people are in, and sometimes that's the only influence they have. And so I think we don't understand that so well. So more counselors, and then also addressing it, like you just said, there's a gap that we have in the system. I know we like to talk a lot about our literacy rate, but we do have a lot of young men that get into high school that have very low math and like reading literacy. So when they get in school, they get into a lot of trouble in the classroom, and then they get kicked out of the classroom, then they end up on the block, and then they're on the block, and then they get into associations, and associations become gangs. So there's lots of those matters as well. So we also need more counselors in the primary schools, even before they get to the high school. So we're looking at some of those things to address that too. But you know how I feel about mental health. So we're really trying to make sure that that's integrated. We do actually have a focused mental health committee that exists at the Prime Minister's office, and we meet quarterly to address issues of mental health and gaps in the system there too. So I'm taking all of your suggestions, very, very excellent ones actually, and looking on how we can improve in those areas. So thank you for that.
Okay, yes. So phone lines are open. You can call in to share your thoughts and any concerns that you have for the program, as we continue with the discussion surrounding Elevate and citizen security here on Inside the News. The program has been, in some quarters, been described as a success for crime fighting in St. Kitts and Nevis, because you're tackling the root cause of the problem, which is poverty, and you're giving the young people an opportunity or a gateway out of poverty, which is uplifting them in terms of skills development. What's some of the challenges that you have encountered so far in terms of the Elevate program itself?
There's always going to be challenges. I think change. We're not so good at change. Even in general society, we're not so good at change. And people were kind of used to things the way they had them, kind of leading, the tail wagging the dog. And so the tail can't wag the dog. And so that's, I think, a change that was a little challenging in the beginning. Just people getting used to it. But I think also among our members, which are not all, remember, our youth goes up to 35. We actually have members that are in their early 40s. But when it comes to, I think the members, most of them, we have really good relationship. Some of them I know from when they were growing up. A lot of people have been in the system for a long time. And so it's just actually developing a mutual respect. As opposed to feeling intimidated. I don't actually feel like people say all the time, oh, you must be afraid to be in that program. You must be. It's like, actually, I'm not. My members do not try to intimidate me. They're always really respectful. When we call them to meetings, they're always really respectful to me. So I give them a lot of credit for that. They'll challenge. They always want what they want, but they also know who we are and what our position took. So just changing that mentality. Of not always being able to, okay, we want this thing. I think you would remember we had a protest. Remember the protest? Yes, so everybody was upset about this protest. I was like, well, they're protesting. Like, they're not out there harming people or anything. They have an issue, and they've come down to legitimately protest it, So let's just go and see what they feel their issue is. It was over a conflict in the STEP and the peace, because then it was still transitioning out of the alternative lifestyle program, and so some people were still on both, and we had given them instruction in September that they had to clean it, giving them accountability for themselves. You need to choose a program, you have to let go of one, but some members had not. So when it came around time for doubles, because everybody got a double, remember, it wasn't fair because they were on both programs, they would have got a quadruple. But if you've already in your mind spent that extra money, and now you've discovered you're not getting that extra money because you're trying to kind of game the system. So I can't let you game the system. It's unfair to the regular citizen. So then we had to go down and explain. But for us, it was really a communication problem because we didn't realize we're onward cleaning the system, that we still had a few that were in both systems. But we realized that we had to tell them, but they didn't feel they had enough notice. So to that, I admit, it's like she's saying, you have to learn these things, So it's all in the communication. So I was able to go down and say, okay, you know what, this is where we're wrong. Like, I should have maybe communicated this sooner, but I didn't actually know you were still gaming the system. But now that we've corrected it, I can't let you benefit from doing a wrong thing. So you have to understand that you did the wrong thing, and that's why I have to make this choice. And to be honest, they understood, and they dissipated, and we didn't have any challenges in that area as well. So sometimes it's just communicating. Everybody's going to want what they want. We just have to be honest. And I explained to the public, they're not going to support this. You need to, like, we want this program to be supportive. We're trying to really build something, and all of them really understood and dissipated. So that was really one of the challenges we had in the beginning. Finding employers that will take on our skills people. We actually have to go out ourselves and start seeking them in the community. So that's been a bit of a challenge in that area. When there's a murder, it makes it hard. Especially, we have to make sure that our training is safe. We want our members to feel safe. But we never really wanted to have security. So like after Nevis, we had to actually bring security because we were in the middle of training and we had a murder, a double murder. So then it's like, how do our coaches feel safe and our members feel safe? What if the suspect is among our membership? You know, so we have to start thinking about those things. So it's always a continuous process of review and thinking and review and thinking and review and thinking and collaboration with police and national security. So it's just it was a work in progress. But now we've kind of got a nice little flow going there. And so it's just been really the rebuilding, I would say, and of course, public relations. I would think that's one of our challenges too, because we do have a lot of programs. Like we have Harvesting Hope as well, which is something we're really proud of that we're doing with 25 by 25. 50 of our members are involved in that. And we have our program that we do with Aging and Disability, where we provide services for our elderly population that are involved in our mature daycare, which we're really proud of that program there as well. So that's really some of the challenges. I think just people adjusting to the change, hearing no. Nobody likes to hear no, you can't do it that way. And just getting everybody working together in a different way, because now we're looking at citizen security differently. I think that everybody now has a much better understanding of the model. So that's really been, I think, some of the challenges.
Someone just messaged me to ask, what assurances does the program have in terms of its continuity, not just presently, but going forward? Because we know administrations come, administrations go, and policy shifts are taken into consideration, because this is something that we have seen the last time. You guys are describing it as an upgrade to what was there before. But there's a concern that this program may altogether just be disbanded. So what's the continuity approach now when you all the people who would have registered would have graduated at 600 plus? What's the longevity of the program, and including potentially a new administration coming in and either revamping or disbanding the program?
Okay, well, a few things. One of the reasons that we're looking at citizen security this way is so that everybody can see the benefit of working together. Oftentimes when governments change, we stop and we reinvent the wheel. Then we spend the next 5 years reinventing the wheel, and then it turns over, you know? That can't work. It's not sustainable as a society, irrespective of which administration is in. But in terms of the assurances, what we're trying to do is put in a framework so that anybody who might inherit the program would have something to work with. So I came in, I didn't really have anything to work with, didn't really know what the mandates, those things were, but we are trying to create a framework that's based on data, that's actually not based on my feelings or your feelings or what I think you think is best or you think is best, but what's actually needed. So that is it's a program, and every program that we have should exist. Sometimes we come and we reinvent something, or we adopt something that somebody took. That's fine, but somebody should be there. Something should be there. So the assurance that we have is that we are really basing our program on data. Our coaches do reports. We had a consultant. They do regular reporting. And we try to get a lot of information from our members so that we can make sure that anybody who comes to meet the program would meet a framework that they could work with. however they want to adjust it. And they would take from it what they feel would work, and they would, I guess, discard what they feel doesn't work. But we would hope with the approach that we're taking now that the program, once it gets really into its flow and people see its successes, that people would take the successes from the program and adopt them. So that's a hopefulness. I don't have an assurance because I don't have control over what other political parties or other parties would choose to do with the program. But also we have an adaptive management style. So when it comes to when the program is going to end, the program is set to end at the end. So not this January, but the following January, this tranche of the program would end. But the reason we collect the data is because then we would know, okay, what was missing and how can, if we're going to redo the program, how can we restructure the program? Is there going to be new membership? What would be the qualifications to be a member? Who would we focus on now? Maybe there's a gap. Maybe once people move through the system, we need to be focusing just on young people coming out of school. So we have to look at what's happening in our country and adapt the program to meet the needs of what's happening in our country. So like even, for example, the program we're just about to launch, we started it in the schools and then realized, no, let's send it out to the general public in terms of girls learning about financial literacy, our Cash is Queen program. So we just want them to take what's working, and continue. But, you know, I feel like we're going to be here to continue this program and to see its successes. But should we not be here, then I would hope that somebody would adapt all the best practices from the program and continue it in the best interest of the citizens.
Yeah, I like how you explained that. In terms of, because the concern that we have is that, as you rightly said, you know, administrations come, administrations go. You know, continuity of programs has long been one of the biggest challenges. You stop, you review, and then you restart, and that can take some time. In terms of the certification, and I know you mentioned CVQ or MVQ?
MVQs. We're waiting on the CVQs. We're almost there. Once we get to the MVQs, then the CVQs are next, which is very exciting.
Okay, so when we get to that level, would this be a certification that if Mr. Abel is on the program, he graduates from the program, that if there's a job offer, let's say he finds some skill in Antigua or nearby, he would be able to transition somewhere overseas to
that's the CVQ, so that's the next phase. MVQ is the National Vocational Qualifications. So at this point, so for example, say you are a young man, you might not have finished school, but you've been working in construction and you've been doing masonry work in your community for the last 3-4 years. You might not have the qualification because you were a school leaver, or maybe you didn't go to AVEC, which some of our members actually do go to AVEC and graduate from AVEC, but you didn't go to AVEC, but you can't be tested on the skill you have. MVQs allow you to be tested in the different components for the skills you already have. So not all of our members that are a little older are going to be willing to go back, which is one of the things from the previous Peace program. They're sending them to AVEC. So that's how their program ended. When we came in, they were telling all the members are going to have to go to AVEC, but some of them are grown. Like, I don't know if you want to be 36 and going to AVEC. So we even started looking at like a night school program at AVEC when those transitions come in. So that's what I mean when you say we don't know what's going to happen, because we don't know what's going to happen in the country. When the AVEC is transitioned into the National Skills Training Center, that's going to give us so many more options for our membership that we won't have to always find them a job. We might just get to test them in skills and let them go learn some skills so they could get back to work. It gives us more options. So that's why I say I have to adapt it. But in that way, so we allow the persons to test for their skills, and if you have competencies, then you get your like certificate level 1 or certificate level 2 or certificate level 3 without always having to go back and do all this stuff if you already have that skill. But if you see you have a gap, then maybe you do need to go back to learn that part of the gap, so you know somebody's house isn't falling down because you're not good at that part, you know. So that's how those two things would work together. So that's how the MVQs. But next is the CVQs, which I'm really excited about, because if you're a member and you don't have a violent criminal record, And we're talking all the time about CARICOM free movement. I think we don't always understand all the things connect together. CARICOM free movement means, yes, we're always worried. People are going to come to our country. They're going to take up our jobs. But we have to make sure we have the skills, even in areas like so that we can go. So let me start there, and then I'll pick something else up. So we have the skills. So even with the CVQs, then you can move. So like you said, say there's a job in Antigua, and you want a fresh start. Nobody in Antigua knows you. You could take your CVQ and go over to Antigua, even your MVQs in certain countries, and go over and say, like, oh, look, I have a national work certificate. People come here all the time with work certificates, but we don't have any. So now that we now have MVQs, we can go to other people's countries and be like, oh, I do have my skill certificate, so I can do this skill and get a fresh start. And that's also important for us, that people be able to benefit from the same benefits that other people have when they come to St. Kitts and Nevis, which has a higher quality of living than a lot of the other countries in the region.
And that's a valid point, because the OECS at this point, and I think it was in the news earlier, the OECS is beginning to further educate its member countries and the population within those countries in terms of the benefits of free movement. That's because correct. Somebody can wake up tomorrow and just hop over to Antigua, St. Vincent, Grenada, right, and continue to exercise their freedom and utilize their qualifications. So I think that initiative is really good in terms of someone who wants a fresh start can just go anywhere and settle down and start their life.
And culturally, we haven't really been benefiting, because our people go to America, UK, Canada. It never occurs to us to go to any of the other islands. But other islands look over at St. Kitts and they're like, St. Kitts is looking pretty good to me. They got a good standard of living. They got a high minimum wage. The quality of life is pretty good. It's really relatively very safe. People come to St. Kitts. They love St. Kitts. They come on vacation. They move. We don't really travel to other islands like that to say, okay, we want to go to live here, unless you're like with ECCB or those kinds of, but we have to kind of shift that thinking to look at how we are taking advantage of the opportunities. Even for us, just like we talk about elevate your life, elevate your choices, elevate your opportunities, your choices in your life. So we're not even taking those as regular citizens. We don't take those benefits. So it's important that we start to tie all the things.
I think the problem that we have, it's a cultural problem. This is right across the Caribbean region. We have families in the United States, the UK, and so forth. So our first decision is, the grass is greener over there. We don't have to, throw fertilizer or anything. We just go family. You're lodged by your family, and you're good to go after that.
Yeah, and I also think we're not so honest, even though it's not related, about how hard life is in those places. So you see people come back and you're like, oh, they're living good in the U.S. I want to go to the U.S. It's like, it's not like, you're never going to starve in St. Kitts. There's always going to be somewhere you could get food from in St. Kitts, depending on what you want to eat. There's always going to be somewhere where you can get assistance in St. Kitts. But in these countries, you're out there on your own. You're just like one person out there. You don't always have people. The systems are different. It's really an adjustment. So I think that we also take for granted a lot of the privileges that we have as St. Kitts and Nevis citizens. And so I think it's important too that we start to now educate our people more about our opportunities and what we can get by taking part in these OECS initiatives. And
because I was telling someone this morning in the newsroom that you could run across to your neighbor and beg for a little sugar or something. You know what you did back in those days? A little sugar, please. Some butter, please. That sort of thing. Can't do that in the U.S.
No, you can't. It's funny. I was just in Guyana, and I had a lady that I met there, and she was saying she was complaining about the cost of sugar. I think it was like $3 for a bag of rice or something. Guyana, that's very. And she said, we used to do these things. You just go to your neighbor, and your neighbor gives you. So we don't really worry about it, because in our communities we don't worry about it because we just help each other. So I think that we take for granted things that we think people would say, oh, that's kind of backwards, are actually great things about our culture, that sense of community. And I think we're losing that sense of community. So this is why I feel like this initiative is an opportunity for us to get back to being a community and also to heal from COVID. We have not healed from COVID. As a therapist, we'd say people are very dysregulated. They haven't yet got back to that mindset, even though we don't think about it. So we're triggered very easily. So even the situation with crime is a trigger for us, because it's been a long time since we saw that. We were quiet. There was nothing. And then we were just thrust back in, boom. Even our kids, when I get back to counseling after COVID, I had so many children coming in with anxiety and depression. I don't think people realize that our children have so much anxiety and depression. They have very poor conflict resolution skills. They're not really communicating, and sometimes we don't really listen to them. So they say, oh, I'm stressed, but their stress isn't like our stress. Like, what you stressed about? You ain't got no bills. But they do have stress. They really are overwhelmed. And I think that's also an area that we have to start looking at, because our young people are really at risk because of this, and we haven't really approached how COVID has messed with our mental, for better lack of words.
We did an investigative piece during COVID, and that was one aspect that we looked at. And what we found, including when some comments I got from parents, was that children were either, and this is just as we were about to come out of the major lockdowns and so forth, that children were becoming antisocial, one, and two, a lot of them, they did not want to go out and engage with children. They were either stressed, as you rightly said, or they were just locked in front of the TV. There was this shift, and I don't think we really indeed actually paid much attention to that.
And we didn't look at the problems. Like, domestic violence was way up during COVID. People are now in the house together. So if you're a person who's a victim of domestic violence, you find ways to stay out of your house and to stay out of the way. But now we're all stuck in the house together, worrying about limited resources. We can't get out. Maybe we don't like each other. Whatever we're doing to get out, to get a break from each other, we can't do that. Children can't get away from seeing it with their parents. These things have an effect. We don't think that when you're in a relationship and somebody hits you, oh, that's always because he loves me. Your kids are seeing that. It's modeling behavior. So all of these things are that we don't like to talk about are on top of each other, and they're affecting our citizen security.
Is that one of the topics that you are discussing either at the Elevate level or within the communities when you go out and engage in terms of consultations and so forth?
Mostly right now at consultations, but it also happens at Elevate. Like, for example, I explained to you that we suspend persons who get charges. Sometimes our members will tell us, oh, I don't really have a charge, it's domestic violence. And you're like, no, that's a charge. Well, it's not really a crime, I just banged my girlfriend, I just hit her, man. And you're like, no, hitting your girlfriend is a charge. Like, that's a thing. But we have so normalized sexual abuse and domestic abuse. We put a lot of blame on victims. We don't really address it in a healthy way as a society. So how would we address it as an issue that we need to solve? But it is an issue that we need to solve because it contributes. You know how angry you are as a boy that watches your mother get banged off all the time? Either you're going to grow up never to touch somebody, or you might grow up to emulate that behavior. That's how you deal with conflict. Oh, I saw this all the time. That's what you get when you see that in counseling. So we have to also think about our modeling behavior and how we're behaving in our families and in our communities, and even as a community, how we judge people. We have sexual abuse cases. Most girls, 1 in 5 girls throughout the whole world, and including in the region, will be sexually abused before they're 18 years old. That has a lot of adverse experiences, a lot of trauma. It affects the way that we relate to each other. I've had clients who come in abusive situations, and sometimes the woman will come in and she'll say, well, I want to see if he said he better, but I want to see if he's going to bang me again. It's like, maybe that's not really the approach, but we have to start thinking about these things and talking about these things and looking at it as a holistic, whole of society problem, and not just a problem situated in this small group of people.
Okay, we have to take a break now, acknowledge our partners, TDC and Carib Brewery, and then when we come back, I want to ask you on the other side of the break about, and this is surrounding the same topic, children, what is the approach from the Citizen Security Secretariat in terms of children? Because I heard something startling the other day, which was very, very concerning. I think you touched a bit on it. The single parent homes and the children, what's the approach to dealing with those children specifically when we come back?
We're different. We're 98.9. 98.9. Win FM.
TDC Financial Services. We're here for you to help you make your dreams come true. Whether your needs are big
Financial Services, where money is made easy.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib, it's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
And we are back here on Inside the News. So before I took the break, the concern that I threw out there was single parent homes with young children being brought up without fathers. This is one thing that was discussed recently. We discussed this amongst ourselves as journalists. But I was told something recently that for me raised quite an alarm. It has to do specifically with a particular child whose father was killed in the gun violence that we've been seeing. And another child, the way in which he put it over, it drew some attention in terms of, and this is me just paraphrasing here, I'm going to, remember how your father died? He got killed or something like that, and I would do the same thing or something of that sort, right? And this is a young child who is probably in primary school, and the mere fact that something like this is being said, how is the secretariat, how is the ministries across the board, not just national security, how is that approach being taken to treat and deal with children of those who are impacted by gun violence, and also to educate the young children, children, but the young ones about what's happening in society right now?
Okay, so that's actually a sad but very true antidote. Okay, so first it begins with, I don't know if it's always just single parent homes, although we know that single parent homes are a higher risk. Sometimes it's two parent homes, sometimes it's multiple family homes. So your father is also in several other homes. There's several children with different parents in the home. So that's always a challenge as well, in addition to single parents homes, because it's not so complex. It's just single parents. Sometimes it's multiple families. Sometimes there's two parents in the home, or sometimes there's two parents and an absent parent in the home. So lots of those examples. So we know that one of the things we have to address, of course, is quite obvious, parenting programs. We know across that's the thing, but nobody ever gets them achieved, right? How hard could it be? Sometimes it's resources. How do you implement a parenting program that doesn't just target one set of parents and make people feel like we're saying you're a bad parent, but actually targets all parents, because everybody needs help with parenting. You have children, we have to get a driver's license to drive, but you don't need to get a parent license to parent, And and our parents are younger and younger, and in our generations you used to have, things were passed down, but now it's a different kind of generation. It's like a TikTok generation. So the things that are passing down are not the same values and characters. So one of the things we realized at the Secretariat is the importance of character education and building. And then, of course, the need for parenting programs and not repeating those programs. So, for example, I sit on the Drug Council. The Drug Council has a parenting program. The Social Development has a parenting program. Juvenile Justice has plans in their mind for how we can parenting. But we have all these different groups. There might be Mothers Union might have a parenting program, but nobody has enough resources and nobody has enough access to infiltrate all the parents. So how can we, the role of the Citizen Security Unit is to bring everybody together. How can we create a national parenting program where we put all of the human resource together and we can then share the financial resource for implementing the program? So that's one of the ways, working together. But also, we don't want people to feel coming into it, the consultations, that we have all the answers, because then why are we consulting? that means we'd really be coming in just to be checking off boxes. We're not trying to be checking off boxes. I think we've done enough of that in governments all over the world and in the region already. So really, we want to make sure that it's collaborative, that people can say, okay, this has really worked in this program, but this didn't work. Early childhood education has been working on parenting programs for a long time. Why is it that those programs are not? What are they doing that we can mix with? So that's important, that we collaborate, and it's not just that the answers are coming from the government, but also from the public, who actually have a lot of answers. And then we have to also look at this generation and our own generation and our desensitization to violence. I speak with one of my girlfriends from St. Lucia, and she says to me all the time, we're really worried because, kids are not, they're like, it's nothing to them. And for us, it's a great concern, violence, but the kids are like, oh, Billy died today. You saw Billy on the sidewalk? Even if you think about Model Cop, doing great work out there. I know he brings the information, but if you see Model Cop on when he's saying, people are in the comments saying, get closer, I want to see the dead body. Let me see, I want to see the gunshot. When did that become our culture? So because we're so desensitized to the violence, it's actually affecting our children. If you go to the movie theater and there's a violent thing happening in the movie theater, first off, why are people small children in the movie theater? If you're in there in a violence cut up, once there was a movie, I had to leave it. It was so much violence. And there was a family behind me with a 3-year-old, a baby, and a 5-year-old. Like, if you're going to bring your kids to watch violent movies, you can't be surprised when your kids are desensitized to violence. If you're going to let your play, even though we're like, oh, let them play the games because we want them to be busy and we're doing our thing, your kids are really shooting people real life. It's not like when they were playing Roadblocks and they shoot the thing and the thing falls into little Lego pieces. No, it's blood. There's like games with like prostitution. You shoot the prostitution, you pick her up and you attack her and then you throw her out on the side. Like, these are the things that we're exposing our kids, and then we're like, oh, we don't know why our kids talk like this. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. What is the accountability that we're taking for the exposure that we have to violence, and what is the response that we're having? So we'll say, oh, we don't want to see these murders, but you're like, get closer, and we go to the movies and we see this violence and we laugh. So even when you see people laughing at violence, laughing is actually a response of discomfort. People think that it's like, oh, we're adjusting to it, but it's not. It's like when they say, oh, but I touched that woman inappropriately, but she giggled. Yes, because she doesn't know what else to do. So we don't even know how to properly respond to violence. So we are desensitizing our children to the negative of violence. So now they think it's normal, and they're using it to each other, and they hear things in their homes and their communities. Oh, that boy died. He was a gangster. He has so much bodies, but he also had a mom and a sister, maybe a brother and a father. Maybe a brother who's going to come back in 6 years and remember that you didn't care about his brother dying and get some kind of retaliatory justice. And because, like I said earlier, we're not restoring the community after these things, then what are we doing to heal that? So it's become something that we should never normalize.
And one concerning thing that I am also seeing, which is a trend across the Caribbean, and some have been told it's happening here as well, is the way in which parents are seeking to address conflicts, especially within the education system. I know schools in Guyana, Trinidad, the Bahamas, and a couple of other places, parents are no longer going to schools to address the issues with the issues that their children may have in terms of what bad behavior that made the teacher scold them or whatever it is. Now, parents are coming to beat the teacher because they reprimanded my child for whatever it is.
When did that happen?
Do. And these issues are now triggering children to an extent disrespect teachers. So no longer we have a community where the community is raising the child, but the child is now managing the community itself.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes look at our communities. Sometimes we don't want our communities to raise our kids. Sometimes our communities are raising our kids, but we don't have the same values that we had before when communities raised kids. So I don't actually think communities are not raising kids anymore. I just think that the values of the community have shifted. So the ways that we're raising kids are not the right ways anymore. So I think we're not asking parents and kids to be accountable. And I think it also comes from the blame. The blame shifting general in society. So when a school calls a parent comes in feeling guilty, like, oh, they're coming in to tell me what a bad parent I am because my child misbehaved. No, children misbehave. they're going to fight. But you have to come in and tell your child why what they did is wrong, not come in and give them right for wrong. So when we give people right for wrong, I have a teenage son. He does wrong things. He's a teenage son. But I can't give him right for wrong. If he's right, I'm going to support you. But you're wrong. You're wrong. I cannot give you right for wrong. Don't make his suspension any less because I'm a PS. Or no, he's supposed to. Everybody has to be accountable, or we're teaching them a wrong lesson. You know. But we also, as adults, have to be accountable for our decisions. We ourselves don't always take accountability for the wrong. So that's bad modeling. That we do. So I think that what you're talking about is something that happens very often, and that's something that we have to be looking at as a citizenship, you know, how we respond to that. And also schools have to be a little flexible, not in terms of them not doing that, but also how are we speaking to children? You know, teachers are just human beings too. They came in to teach a class. They don't always have management skills for a class. They don't always know how to manage other people's children. They might just be managing their own children. How do they manage other people's children? What support do we give to teachers? And then how is that translating to children? So if teachers are getting support, this is how we could deal with this, we could deal with that, we could do it with this, then they would be more likely to be able to maybe transfer that. So that's one of the areas we're looking at too, what we can be doing with teachers in terms of capacity building to really help them to be able to feel more confident in the classroom and managing conflict. Because their kids spend most of their days at school. Mm-hmm.
The government has, the police force rather, is now enforcing the issue of curfews for children in terms of when they can be out of, when they should be in the house. Because generally, if you ask me back in the days as someone growing up, you know, as soon as the sun turns and the shadow is there, you had to be home.
Hello. I used to listen for my mom's car. We got to get it. We hear it. Put it down the street, running in the house before she comes to catch us.
Right. But now we have kids, and I can recall Christmas Eve a couple of years back, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm seeing kids on Port Zante. I just found that it's being ridiculous. And then recently, maybe last year or sometime back, the police had put out some photos of some children because they were breaking vehicles that were passing on the F.D. Williams Highway. Is the government, is from your approach, from the Secretariat, is there any consideration for prying the government to put in stiffer penalties, legislation-wise, to have parents be held accountable for their children's actions?
Well, to be honest, a lot of these penalties exist. We just don't enforce them. We do a lot of laws. We don't always do regulations. And so it gives us an opportunity to look at the regulations and how those things are enforced and how those things work together. So, for example, a curfew, it's brilliant. You need to get people off the street, but the curfew already existed. That means everybody was just ignoring it. That means we weren't actually policing it in the first place, but it always was there. We didn't have to go back to Parliament to put that in place. So that means that existed. So we didn't see a need for it, so we kind of eased away from it. Now we see a need for it, we put it back in. But the things don't exist in exemptia. They're not isolated. So once the kids, if you do charge the parent, because it's the parent that gets charged, then that means you also have to work with social services. So how does social services, so the Citizen Security that looks at, okay, so now the police have made this decision. How does it affect the rest of the system? So how can the rest of the system respond to this decision made at policing to make sure that the purpose of the law is fulfilled? So if the role is really for us to get kids off the street and for parents to be more accountable, and now the parents are accountable, what in the law supports that? So our juvenile justice legislation actually supports that. So what in the law actually supports that? Can we make things stiffer? Can we mandate parenting courses? Do we want to mandate parenting courses? How receptive are parents who have to go to parenting going to be? Are they going to just go resentful? You know? So we also have to be looking at those things. So those are also solutions that we're looking to from the public. So I'm glad that you're bringing, you by the way asked awesome questions. I'm glad you're bringing these questions because I really want the listeners to be listening to these questions and to be sharing. You could even just email the Citizen Security secretariat at citizensecurity@gov.kn with any suggestions that you have. Like, you know what I think we should do about that? I think we could do this, because it's important. So those are things that we have to look at. Those, when I was talking to you earlier about the blockages and the gaps. So, when you're in the system, working in the system, you're like, you can get a bit burnt out. Like, I always feel very sorry for child protection services because they get very burnt out. It's like they're knocking their head against the wall. Everybody's got to work together. Okay, the police have to do their job, and child protection services has to do their job, and the special unit, victims unit has to do their job. And if this doesn't get to the courthouse and turn over, that's why I see that the AG is really making an effort to get more cases turned over more quickly. Then all these things have to work together, or they don't work at all. They're just things on paper to check off.
Okay, so we are a bit out of time. Well,
it goes
my
so
definition
quickly.
of a little, and it's a different definition. But we're kind of out of time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you about 3-4 minutes to give us some parting words.
Okay, well, I'm really glad to have been here today to get to speak to the public and give more information about the program and even the citizenship campaign. We just encourage you. We just don't want it to be a government. We know we're leading the approach, but it's so important that it's an all of society approach. And that as you're listening to me, you're thinking about ways that you yourself, in your community, in your churches, which is even important, in your sports teams, in your family, in your youth group, are really thinking all the time about what can we be doing to make these things better, And we want everybody just to be engaged and talking about it and sharing the information so that beyond the 90 days, we can start to implement the plan. So the 90-day plan, people are like, what are these just consultations? We're just meeting and talking? No. In the next phase, after the meeting and talking, we come together, we look at the problem again, as it's seen from the public, because we've already presented to you the problem as it's seen through USAID. We've compared it to the Jamaica comparative. We've looked at our local issues with, and we looked at the role of public health as an initiative. So you have that data. You can find that online on any of our pages, on SKNS's pages, on ZIZ, on PMO. You can find that information. But what is your information? What are we collating all that information for so we can present it? And then once we present it, okay, what are the solutions that already exist in the program? So everybody knows what those are. Now, how can we work with what we need and what we have for a strategic plan that we can use moving forward? How long will that plan be? 3 years, 5 years, 7 years? So now we have to start moving towards that. So it's a process. And we just want everybody to understand that it's a process, and it's not going to be 90 days then done. This is just the 90 days just to get the information out there, get everybody engaged, get everybody to understand, get everybody to be committed to the program, because once we have community buy-in, there's nothing that we can't do as a society. I really believe in St. Kitts and Nevis. I think that we could make this change. That's why even right now I'm getting a little bit of goosebumps. I think this is one of the reasons that we're purposed to this work, really to be in service to our country. And I think this is a great opportunity. So I thank everybody who is doing initiatives. If you have an initiative that you're doing, also email us. Send us your, we're putting up our Instagram, and our Facebook should be up early next week. Send us your flyers. We'll put up your flyers. We'll promote your events. We're very happy to do this so everybody knows what's going on and that they can see how the citizens have really come forward to show us how committed they are also to citizen security. And just to remember that it is all of society approach. All of us sometimes are part of in fact, in some way, everybody can be a contributor to the problem, so everybody needs to be a contributor to the solution. And thank you for your callers that called in with really insightful questions and information, and we look forward to continuing to work together and, of course, speaking more about the program and being as transparent and accountable to the public as is what the public and the taxpayers deserve. So thank you for having me today. I'm really, really grateful for you having us here, and we look forward to speaking on this platform and other platforms just to help the public to understand the problem better and to engage you in finding the solutions. So thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us. when I'm in the hot seat, as I say, I like to go beyond the headlines to talk about the issues, not just the politics, because, politics can get us nowhere. We discuss, we blame. And I think you went beyond the headlines itself. You went beyond the issues, and you gave us some really great insights in terms of the Elevate program and what the Citizen Security Secretariat has been doing and will continue to do. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Jermaine.
Well, there you had it. That was our program for today. It was really good being in your company today, folks. Do join us again next Saturday. I'm not sure if I'm going to be in the hot seat next week. The UN meeting starts this weekend, actually, yes. So, yes, in the meanwhile, do stay tuned to all media platforms, including WinFM, and you can get all of the latest news and information regarding St. Kitts and Nevis. In the meantime, do enjoy the rest of your weekend and do support the St. Kitts and Nevis Patriots as they continue with their campaign in the CPL season. Until next time, it's goodbye.